This is the story of Manchester United. Why the Glazers didn't sell, why the INEOS deal was the optimal outcome, and why success at this club doesn't mean the same thing to the owners as it does to the supporters. Manchester United. It's one of the biggest names in world football, one of the strongest brands in global sport, and one of the most valuable clubs ever built. And the money reflects that. Over 660 million in revenue, about half from commercial deals alone. In fact, Manchester United, the business, just had its best year ever. At the same time, Manchester United, the team, finished 15th in the Premier League. No Champions League, no European football, and total chaos. And yet, the business kept winning. But here's the truth. Manchester United is a world-class business that only needs a good enough football team. United today is a financial machine, and for the owners, that machine has worked extraordinarily well. This is not just a game we love, this is how the system works. I'm Kevin, and this is Money Rules Football. Let's get into it. We all see Man United as one football club, but think of it as these two overlapping circles. So Circle 1 is the commercial and financial machine. Sponsorships, retail, hospitality, media rights, and global brand partnerships. This is the business that generates the cash. Circle 2 is the football machine. Recruitment, wages, squad planning, coaching, and performance on the pitch. This is the product that drives the sporting success. Each circle is dependent on the other, but most fans see Circle 1 as a tool that serves Circle 2. You make money so you can buy the best players and win trophies. But from an ownership perspective, you can also see Circle 2, the football machine, as a product funding Circle 1, or the financial machine. You invest in football performance to protect and fuel the revenue engine. Not to necessarily maximize glory, but maximize dividend and returns. Circle 1, the golden cash cow. When the Glazers bought Manchester United in 2005, they did it through a leveraged buyout, or a LBO. That means debt was loaded onto the club itself, not onto the owners personally. Before that takeover, United was essentially debt-free. By 2010, total debt had climbed to around £700 million. Fast forward to today, and around £550 million of net debt is still on the balance sheet. And that debt has real consequences. In the 2025 financial year alone, Manchester United paid £59 million in finance costs. That's money leaving the club every year just to service borrowing. And on top of that, there's been direct extraction by the Glazer family. Altogether, well over £1 billion has left the club through debt servicing, dividends, and ownership-related payments. At the same time, Old Trafford has been allowed to age, Carrington have lagged behind rivals, and infrastructure investment has been delayed. So we all look at this and say, how can a club making this much money feel so underinvested? Even Cristiano Ronaldo told the whole world.
Nothing changed. Surprisingly, not only the pool, the jacuzzi, even the gym. Even some points of technology, they stop in a time which is it surprised me a lot. I thought I will see different things.
So here's the uncomfortable answer, because from a financial perspective, the model worked. United paid the interest, the owners extracted value, and the underlying assets kept growing. From a business perspective, that's not a failure. That's a successful financial investment. So why the Glazers didn't sell? Fans assumed that the Glazers wanted out. They announced a strategic review process, but in reality, the Glazers had something very valuable. American ownership has been pouring into Europe in the last 10 years. They're drawn by the significant upside in European football. Therefore, to sell the club and exit, the price would have had to compensate the Glazers not just for today's value, but for decades of future upside. And that bar was extremely high. Manchester United, as a financial vehicle, delivers cash flow, global exposure, and rising valuations. Sheikh Jassim came in from Qatar, and his bids reportedly reached around £5.5 billion. He also promised to clear all debt and invest heavily in infrastructure. Instead, the Glazers chose the INEOS deal. And from a pure incentives perspective, it was close to perfect. INEOS bought approximately 25% of the club for around 1 to 1.2 billion pounds, which valued the club at around 5 to 5.5 billion pounds. The Glazers got 715 million pounds in immediate cash. INEOS also committed around 300 million US dollars in capital for infrastructure. In return, INEOS gained control over football operations, which is recruitment, coaching, squad planning, but the Glazers remained. 75% of economic ownership, majority voting control through their Class B shares, and a clause that lets them force INEOS to sell the share above a set share price. So here's what the structure does. It gives the Glazers immediate liquidity, £715 million, without giving up control. It offloads operational and political pressure to INEOS, deflecting any fan protests. It imports fresh capital for infrastructure without requiring the Glazers to fund it themselves, and it keeps them positioned for future upside. If United's valuation rises from £5 billion to £7 billion or £8 billion over the next decade, driven by broadcasting growth or commercial expansion or Saudi investment interest, the Glazers' 75% stake grows with it. A full sale at $5.5 billion would have capped their upside at that number. This structure lets them extract more cash now and stay exposed to future gains. From a financial vehicle perspective, it's optimal. The Glazers have now taken over £1.3 billion out of the club through share sales and dividends, while United have paid over £800 million in interest and still has over £500 million in debt on the books. And that's why they didn't sell, because the financial vehicle is too good to give up. So this brings us to the crux of the issue, and where the frustration comes from. Fans and owners are playing completely different games. So fans measure success by trophies, Premier League titles, Champions League titles, FA Cups, dominance on the pitch, and being the best. Owners measure success by cash flow and enterprise value, revenue growth, profit margins, share price, dividend capacity, and the truth is, United has been a very profitable investment for the Glazers, without needing to dominate football at all. Since 2005, it's been reported that the Glazers have extracted over $1.3 billion from the club. The commercial revenue has grown from around $50 million in 2005 to over $300 million in 2025. The club's value has grown from roughly £790 million in 2005 to around £5.5 billion in 2024. All while the club, from a football perspective, has been in complete chaos for well over 10 years. So it goes to prove, you don't really need trophies. What you need is a strong brand, a global fan base, large commercial partnerships, and consistently high matchday revenue, and just enough football performance to stay relevant. Which brings us to the one place where the footballing side and the commercial side actually overlap: Champions League qualification. There's only one threshold where supporters and owners care about the same thing: Champions League qualification. For supporters, it's the bare minimum. For owners, it's the financial cliff edge. Here's why. United's financial 2025 results show exactly what happens when you miss the Champions League. Broadcasting revenue fell to around £170 million, down significantly from prior years, because Europa League pays far less than the Champions League, and a 15th place league finish reduces merit payments from the Premier League even further. The revenue gap between the Champions League and the Europa League is tens of millions of pounds per season, but the gap between Europa League and no Europe at all, estimates suggest around £100 million in lost revenue when a club misses European competition entirely. And that's the cliff. So from the Glazers' perspective, Champions League qualification isn't just desirable, it's essential. It protects the TV revenue, it protects the commercial appeal, and it protects the valuation of the club. And from the fans' perspective, it's the absolute minimum acceptable standard. So this is one place where incentives align. Invest enough in the football side to stay competitive for top 4. But here's where it breaks down. Because fans want investment beyond just that. The fans want Man United to challenge for titles. They want the infrastructure to compete with City and Liverpool and the ambition to dominate Europe again. But owners only need to invest enough to protect the Champions League threshold. Anything beyond that is basically optional. Because titles are nice, but they're not required for the financial vehicle to work. Top 4 is required. Titles are upside. And that's the fundamental misalignment. So now, let's talk about Circle 2, the football vehicle. If the Glazers only need to protect the Champions League, how do you explain the chaos? Why has United spent over £1 billion of transfers since Ferguson retired? Why have United paid some of the highest wages ever in world football? And why have the results still been so inconsistent? Because spending money is not the same as building a coherent football operation. United have hired and fired managers with completely different philosophies, from David Moyes to Ruben Amorim. Each one required different types of players, and each one left behind a mismatched squad. United's recruitment has been reactive, not strategic. Big-name signings that didn't fit a system, panic buys at the end of a transfer window, and contracts given out based on reputation, not performance. And critically, United's football operation lacked structure. No sporting director for years, no coherent recruitment philosophy, and commercial priorities often overriding football logic. Why? Because the primary objective was never build a machine that wins titles. It was spend enough to stay competitive for top 4 while protecting the financial vehicle. And you can do that with chaos. You can finish 3rd one year, 6th the next year, 2nd year after, and 15th year after that. As long as you don't fall off the cliff entirely. As long as you're not finishing 10th for 5 consecutive seasons and missing Europe. The financial vehicle keeps working. So the commercial revenue keeps growing and the matchday revenue stays strong, and the global brand stays intact. So from the Glazers' perspective, the football side doesn't need to be excellent. It just needs to be good enough. And that's exactly what it has been. Or maybe not. So what does INEOS actually change? INEOS was given full control over football operations. So that includes recruitment, coaching appointments, academy structure, data analytics, medical and performance staff. The intention was clear: professionalize the football side with governance, structure, and long-term planning. But 2 years in, there's nothing to suggest the INEOS footballing plan is working at all. And crucially, here's what INEOS doesn't change. The debt is still there, the interest payments are still being made, the Glazers still control 75% of the club, and the Glazers can still extract dividends in the future if they choose. And critically, the fundamental incentive hasn't changed as well. The only thing needed to protect the financial vehicle is Champions League qualification, not titles. Not to say if United get lucky with timing and if rivals slip, then yes, United could win a Premier League or Champions League under this structure. But the system isn't designed to maximize that outcome. It's designed to protect the financial vehicle while competing for top 4. Titles would be a bonus, not the objective. And that differs from what the fans want. So what does all of this mean for the United supporters? It means you're supporting a club where the owners are playing a different game than you are. You want dominance. The owners want profit. You measure success in trophies. They measure success in enterprise value and cash extraction. The system is working exactly as designed. From the owner's perspective, the Glazers have extracted over $1.3 billion in cash through dividends and share sales. The club's enterprise value has grown from £790 million to over £5 billion. Commercial revenue has grown from £50 million to over £300 million. And that's an extraordinarily successful investment. The fact that United haven't dominated football since 2013 doesn't matter to the financial vehicle. What matters is brand strength, which is still intact, revenue growth, which is still climbing, Champions League qualification, which is mostly maintained, and as long as these three things hold, the financial vehicle works. And as long as the financial vehicle works, the Glazers have no financial pressure to change the model. Even after a season where United finished 15th, they posted record revenue. So that tells you everything you need to know about the incentive and the structure. The business doesn't need the football to be great. It just needs the football to be good enough. And from the Glazers' perspective, even with all the chaos, it still is. So here's the final question. If you want Manchester United to behave like a club that must win titles, not just protect Champions League qualification, but actually dominate, then something fundamental has to change. Not just better recruitment, not just better coaching. The ownership incentive structure itself has to change. As long as the Glazers control the club, and as long as the financial vehicle works without requiring trophies, there's no pressure to maximize football success. So I'll leave you with this. Is Champions League qualification enough for Man United as a business? The answer is yes. Is that what we want as fans? Well, let me hear in the comments. Was this video next about United and PSR? I'm Kevin. Thanks for watching.